What is up, VR nerds? So already 10 episodes on this tutorial series, and by now I'm sure you should be a VR expert, getting obsessed with your own VR game and making your family concerned think how you enjoy this technology too much. So to meet your expectation, today we have on the menu a feature that you guys were asking a lot since last episode: how to grab an object with two hands. Are you guys ready? Let's get started then. Okay, so we are back where we were at the end of last episode. So if it's the first video that you're watching on my channel and you're just here to learn how to grab with two hands, don't worry, you don't have to redo everything I did previously on this series. All we need to have for this tutorial is a XR rig with an XR Direct Interactor, like I did in the first episode of this tutorial series, so go watch that one if you haven't already. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let me just drag in my scene this 3D gun model, and that's the object we will try to grab with two hands. By the way, I will put the download link to this gun in the description below. So the first thing I'm going to do now is select this game object, click on Add Component, and create a new component called Two-Hand Grab Interactable. This will be the script that will let us grab with two hands this object. Let's wait for this script to compile. Okay, so to grab an object with two hands, the idea is to extend from the XR Grab Interactable script, which is the basic component to grab an object. And then, if we grab the object with the other hand, tosomehow rotate the object. So to extend the XR Grab Interactable, we can write using Unity engine.xr.interaction.toolkit at the top here, and then simply write it here instead of mono behavior. Now, by extending the XR Grab Interactable, this script contains now all the code from this base class. And if we save and go back to Unity, we can see now here all the parameters from the XR Grab Interactable class that we use to grab all of our objects, like the sphere here or the gun over there. Now we can even set it up as always. So to refresh your memory, we need a rigid body on the same game object. So here you go. Some colliders. So for this, as you can see, the gun is separated in several parts. So in my case, I will select them all and create a box collider on all of them. Now, because there is a mesh renderer on each one of these objects, the box collider has taken the shape of each part, which make a good set of colliders on this game object. And finally, we can click back on the gun parent. I will lock the inspector window so that it will keep showing me the parameters of the gun parent. Then select all of the children and drag their collider in the collider list of the XR Grab Interactable. This way the script will use these colliders to grab the object. Finally, we can unlock the inspector window. Awesome! Okay, we got the rigid body, we got the colliders. Now we can set the layer of the gun to grab layer. And if you remember correctly, this was the layer that we used to grab an object, but also to not let us interact with the body, which was making us fly. Okay, so we can say yes to set all children to this layer. Now, last but not least, we can set, as we did for the revolver, the attach transform of this game object. So for this, I will create an empty game object as a child of the gun parent. We can rename it attach transform. And now we can move it and rotate it where we want our object to snap when we grab it. In my case, I will move it near the handle, and for the rotation, make sure that the tool handle is set to local here, and that the blue axis of this empty game object is aligned with the direction of the gun, like so. Now that we have our attach point, we can go back to the two-hand grab script and drag it here in the attach transform parameters. Awesome, now our gun should be ready to be grabbed, so let's click on play to test it. And there you go, as we extended from the XR Grab Interactable, you can see that we can indeed grab it, it correctly offset to the attach transform and works really great. If we want, we can even make it shoot by adding the gun script that we use for the pistol. Download link in the description below, by the way. This step is not mandatory to grab an object with two hands, of course, but if you want it, I can simply copy and paste the gun script on the new gun, and do the same for the audio source, and for the barrel variable, which is where the bullet will be spawned when we shoot. I can create a new empty game object called barrel, move it to the hand of the gun, and make sure that the blue axis is in the forward direction of the gun. Awesome. Now we can drag it in the barrel variable of the gun script. Now we can drag the audio source we copied in the gun script. And now, last but not least, to make the gun fire, when we press on the trigger button while holding the gun, we can go in the two-hand component, click on the plus button for the onActivate event, and drag there the gun script, and let's select here the fire function to trigger when we activate this interactable. Awesome, now our gun is ready to shoot. Let's try it out immediately by clicking on play. And as you can see, if we grab the gun and that I press on the trigger button, it shoots correctly. So now that we got that out of the way, it's time for setting up the two-hand grab. So first thing first, as you can see, for now when the object is grabbed and that I try to grab it with my other hand, the object exits the first hand and snap to the other. So we first need to somehow make it so that it sticks to one hand and one hand only, and let it register a second grab with the other hand, so let me show you how. Okay, so to do so, let's work on our two-hand script. I will first reopen it. Now, as the script extends the XR grab interactable, we will be able to override some function from this base script. For example, if we write override, I can here override all of these functions, and in our case, we want to override the isSelectable_by function. Now, to lock the object to one and only one interactor while it's grabbed, we can check if it's already grabbed by a different interactor with bool already grabbed equals selecting interactor and not interactor.equal selecting interactor. So the first part is to check that there is a selecting interactor already on this game object, but that the current interactor that is trying to grab it is not equals to this one. And now we say that we can select this object if the base function says so and that it's not already grabbed. Perfect. Now if we save and go back to Unity to test our game, we can see that once we grab the object, it's locked and we cannot get it with the other hand. But now is the real issue. How can we make it so that we can control the object with our second hand? And that's not an easy thing because the interactable can only register one interactor at a time. So here is the easiest method that I found. Instead of trying to register two interactors for the same interactable, when an object is grabbed by one hand, we are going to enable grab point for the other hand. And that will guide the rotation of our hand to make it grabbable with two hands. Okay, so I hope you understood at least a bit of this weird explanation, but you will see it's actually way more easier than what it seems. So let's make our grab point for the second hand. For example, if we want the second grab zone to be this part of the gun right there, we can create a cube as a child of the gun, scale it where we want to grab the gun with our second hand, rename this cube second grab point. We can remove the mesh renderer and the mesh filter as we only need the collider. Now we want to interact with this grab point but not actually grab it, so I will add the XR simple interactable script to it, which will let us interact with the cube but not grab it. By the way, as you can see, this will automatically create a rigid body on this same game object. We don't want this rigid body to have gravity, so I will set it to kinematic equals true here. And finally, we can drag the collider of this game object in the collider list. Okay, awesome. We now have a second grab point on this gun. By the way, you can use any collider that you like, any shape, any size. We don't do any discrimination. You could set the second grab point to be the size of the whole gun if you want, and even have multiple one. So for example, I can duplicate this game object and move it over there to another grab point. And I know I'm not even sure we can grab this gun from there. I don't know anything about this gun, but it's my game and I make the rule. Okay, so now if we click on play, you can see that the gun is moving like it has Parkinson. And the reason is that the inner rigid body of the second grab is colliding with the rigid body of the gun. So to fix this, we can create a new layer by going in the layer and clicking on Add Layer. I will name this new layer second hand grab. we can select back our two second and grab point and assign their layer to this new created layer we just made. And now to disable any physics interaction with these, we can go to the physics matrix in Edit, Project Settings, Physics. And there you go. Now down below, we want to disable physics from this layer with all of the other layer except one, the default layer, which is the one used by the hand of the player. Awesome, and there you go. Now if I click on play, you can see that everything seems normal. There is no more issue with the inner collider. Okay, so now that we define our second grab point, let's use them. I will go back to the two-hand script. Now to store these grab points, I will create a new public list of XR simple interactable called second hand grab points. We can initialize it with new list of XR simple interactable. Now I will create two functions in our script. The first one is called on second hand grab. It takes an XR based interactor called interactor as a parameter. And the second one, I will name it on second hand release. Now you guess it, we want these two functions to be triggered when we grab or release with the second hand. So to do this, it's actually really simple. At the start of the game, in the start function, I will go through all of our second hand grab points by writing for each. You can press 2 times here on the tab key on your keyboard to autocomplete the loop. And here, instead of connection, I can write the second hand grab points. And now for each second hand grab point, I can add the on second hand grab as a new listener for when we select this interactable with item.onSelectEnter.add listener and reference here the on second hand grab function. Now we can do exactly the same for when it is released. For now, to test it, I will simply write in the debug console second hand grab in the on second hand grab function and debug.log second hand release in the on second hand release function. Awesome, now we can listen when the second grab point are grabbed or not. And in my case, I will also override the onSelectEnter and the onSelectExit function from the base script. And we can write debug.log first grab enter in the onSelectEnter function and debug.log first grab exit in the onSelectExit function. And now let's save our script and go back to Unity to test it. Hey, Valem from the future here. So here I just forgot to say that you also need to drag all of your second hand grab point in the two hand grab interactable script. Okay, so the moment of truth. Now, as you can see, we can still grab with one hand or gun, but if we approach our second hand and we try to grab the gun at the location of our second hand grab point, it's correctly working and we have the corresponding message popping on the debug console. Awesome! So this doesn't seem like much, but this means that we manage to interact with two hands with our object. And this is in fact the hardest part of this tutorial, so good job to you watching now this part of this video. Now what's left for us to do is to rotate the object according to where our second hand is. So to do so, let's go back to our script. I will create a private variable of type XR base interactor called second interactor, and which will reference the second interactor interacting with this object. So in the on second hand grab, we can set the second interactor to be this interactor, and in the on second hand release, we can set it back to null. And maybe when the main hand releases the object, we can force it to release the second interactor by setting it also to null. Okay, now that we have the interactor reference in our script, I will override all the object move, and we can do this by overriding the process interactable function. And so before moving the object in the base function, if we have a second interactor and that we also have a first interactor which we can get with selecting interactor, we can compute the rotation. So here a little tips. Instead of rotating the whole object, we'll rotate the attached transform of the XR direct interactor, which is used as the pivot to move the grabbed object. And by making this pivot look at the second hand, we'll have the desired effect. So I will do selecting interactor.attachTransform.rotation equals quaternion.lock_rotation, the position of the second hand, so second interactor.attachTransform.position, minus the position of the first hand. So selecting interactor.attachTransform.position. And here what the look rotation does is rotate the pivot point to make it look in the direction of this vector. And this vector is actually the direction that goes from one hand, so the first hand grabbing the object, to the second hand grabbing the object. Awesome, right? Now let's save and test what we made right away. Okay, and here you go, we can grab, and when I grab the second grab point with my other hand, we can modify the direction of the gun. That's awesome. But we now have a small issue because, as you know, we used the attach transform pivot to rotate the object. So what should happen when we release it? Well, nothing good. Now the pivot is completely broken and not pointing to the same direction as before. So what we need to do is reinitialize the pivot point when we release the object. So let me go back to our script. I will create a new variable called attach initial local rotation. We can set it when we start grabbing the object in the onSelectEnter function with attach initial local rotation equals interactor.attachTransform.local rotation. And here make sure you're using the local rotation and not the rotation. And finally, when we release the object in the onSelectExit, we can reset it back to normal with interactor.attachTransform.local rotation equals our attach initial local rotation value. Perfect. And there you go. If we save and test our game once again, you can see that now everything is back to more normal. After we grab with two hands, we can interact with all objects as before. Good job. So I think we still have some times for improving our system, right? Because for now we can set where our object should look with two hands, but we have no control over the up axis. To show you what I mean by this, I will go in the XR Direct Interactor component of my left hand, click on Show Interactor Events, and as you can see, this is where we disable the hand visual when we select an object. So as I want to show you my hand when grabbing, let's select this event and remove it. We can even do the same, but this time for the right hand, so that when we select an object, it won't disappear. Now back to our game. If I try to grab, you can see that even if I rotate my left hand or my right hand, the object doesn't change. And this is what we will fix now. So we basically have three options to set the up axis of our object. Either none, like it's the case right now, first hand to be controlled by the first grabbing hand, and second hand to be controlled by the second grabbing hand. So to help select one of these, I will create a new public enum called toHand rotation type with these three types: none, first, and second. Now we can create a public variable that will use this enumeration, also named toHand rotation type. And now based on this value, we will compute the rotation of the interactor pivot. So here under the process interactable, I will write a new function called getToHandRotation, which will return a quaternion. Let's have a quaternion variable called targetRotation, which will store the result. And now if the toHand rotation type is none, we can set target rotation to the value we calculated before with the look rotation. So let me copy that. If it's first, then I will pass once again the look rotation calculation with it, but this time I will add as a second parameter of this function the up axis of the first hand. So selecting interactor.attach.transform.up. This will make the rotation look the other hand, but align the up axis to have the up axis of the first hand. Now you guessed it, if we have the second hand rotation type, we can do the same, but this time for the second hand by giving as a second parameter the rotation type to second interactor.attachTransform.up. And there you go, now we can return the target rotation that we computed, and we can use this function in the process interactable function. And there you go now, if we save and go back to Unity, you can see that the enum variable gives us a nice variable selection in the inspector. And now feel free to test what grab rotation you prefer. In my case, I really like giving the up axis control to the second grab hand. I feel it's more natural. Okay, so I think we learned already a lot. There is still one thing that I want to show you for the one who made it to this part of this tutorial. So as you can see, when we grab with the second hand, the rotation snaps directly to the attach point of this hand. But what if we don't want this snap? What if we want to keep a seamless offset when we grab? So let me show you how. Back in the script, I will first add a new public bool variable called snap to second hand, set initially to true, and a private quaternion variable called initial rotation offset. So this variable will store the rotation offset when we start grabbing with the second hand. And to calculate this offset, let's do a little bit of math here. In the on second hand grab function, I will do initial rotation offset equals quaternion.inverse get to hand rotation multiply by selecting interactor.attachTransform.rotation. And so as you can see, to calculate the rotation difference between two rotations, we can multiply the inverse of the new rotation by the actual rotation. I will give a link in the description below if you want to know a bit more about the math behind this. Now that we have the initial rotation offset, if we want to make so that the object doesn't snap and keep this offset when moving, what's left for us to do is to multiply the final rotation by this offset. So in the case that we want to snap, so if snap to second hand, we can keep it like it was before, but otherwise we can do the same, but this time multiply by the initial rotation offset to have the final rotation. And there you go, now everything is ready. We can once and for all save our script and play our game. And there you go, guys, you can see the comparison. The second hand doesn't make the object snap anymore, which in my opinion feels more natural. And that's basically it. What a long episode this was, and I'm glad that you made it this far. So please, if you managed to get to this point of this video, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a comment below about how did you find this course, and overall what did you find great or bad on this tutorial series. And please, if you have any tutorial suggestion that you would like to see on this channel, let me know. As always, a big shout out to my amazing Patreon and the new one who joined lately, and if like them you want to have access to all the source code of my project, exclusive content like this awesome advanced and tracking interaction course, and support the channel, please come check out the link in the description below. Anyway, thank you for watching and see you in the next episode.